I hadn't cried in years, but that morning the coffee tasted like goodbye. I sat at the chipped oak table, hands trembling slightly as I lifted the mug to my lips. The steam curled under my nose, cinnamon and bitterness dancing in the air, but nothing masked the sting in my chest. Jaden's voice still echoed from the night before, loud, sharp, careless. "You're just wrinkled and useless, Grandpa. You don't even know how to use your phone, let alone TikTok. You're like a walking museum piece." He had laughed when he said it, but not kindly. His friends joined in, nodding over their screens, thumbs tapping, faces lit by artificial glow instead of respect. I had driven him to college. I had paid for his first car. I had been at every baseball game since he was 6, and somehow, overnight, I had become a relic. The pain wasn't in the insult, it was in the indifference. My own grandson had spoken as if I were already halfway buried. The house was too quiet now. Retirement had stripped away structure. My wife Denise, gone 8 years, a silent absence that still stretched over every room. The walls were hers, her taste in the pale green kitchen, her rose teacups still shelved, her gardening gloves draped across the shed door. I hadn't moved a thing. My knees creaked as I rose. In the bathroom mirror, I took a long look. Sagging jowls, liver spots, a back that curved just slightly. My hands, once firm from construction work, now trembled when I held the razor. Jaden had seen an old man, and he was right, but he hadn't seen the man beneath the skin. I pulled out the photo of me at 28, sleeveless, lean, grinning on the edge of Red Rocks Park, arms wrapped around Denise. My shoulders had been broader then, my eyes sharper. But the core of me, stubborn, driven, deliberate, was still intact, maybe buried, maybe ignored, but not erased. That night I didn't sleep. I found myself scrolling the city listings until I stumbled on a gym. Knox Strength and Motion. Open 24/7, small, independent. The kind of place that smelled of rubber mats and real sweat, not lavender towels. I bookmarked it and left the phone face down. At dawn, I changed. Jeans swapped for sweatpants, the old Broncos hoodie from '97. My running shoes, dusty but intact, sat by the door like loyal dogs. The drive to the gym was quiet. Denver was still wiping frost from its shoulders. Steam curled up from the gutters, and headlights moved like lonely eyes across empty streets. My hands were cold on the steering wheel. I almost turned back twice. Almost. Inside, the gym was half lit, half empty. A single voice called out, raspy and strong. "You lost, sweetheart?" I turned. She stood maybe 5'3", compact and solid, arms like braided rope, 50 maybe, cropped gray hair and eyes that had seen too much to flinch. "No," I said. "I'm here to start." "Start what?" "Whatever this place does." My voice cracked a little. It wasn't fear. It was the dust of disuse. She looked me over, not cruelly, just honestly. "Name?" "Mitchell. Mitchell Crane." "I'm Brenda. Brenda Knox. You here to lose weight, fight off death, or prove someone wrong?" "Some combination," I said, trying not to smile. She nodded and tossed me a clipboard. "Health waiver first, then we'll see what's left in the tank." I filled it out slowly, my handwriting uncertain. The waiver asked about medications, surgeries, limitations. I wrote the truth, heart stents. Right hip replacement. No current meds. Still walk a mile every morning. Brenda handed me a towel and pointed toward a battered treadmill. "Let's start at the ground. That work?" I nodded and stepped on. The belt moved beneath me like a cautious promise. One step, then another, and another. That morning the coffee had tasted like goodbye. But here, soaked in sweat and disbelief, I began to taste something else entirely. The first flicker of return. My legs were shaking by the time Brenda told me to step off the treadmill. 10 minutes. That's all I managed before my right knee began to bark, but I hadn't fallen. I hadn't stopped. And as I stood there panting, sweat crawling down my spine like old regrets, something odd bubbled up inside me. Not pride. Not yet. But the absence of shame. Brenda tossed me a bottle of water and leaned on a nearby bench, watching me like a mechanic listening to a vintage engine. "Not bad for a first run," she said, not unkindly. "You've got grit, Crane. That's rarer than muscle." I didn't answer right away. I was still waiting for my heart to slow down, still listening to it pound like an angry drum behind my ribs. "I want to do this again," I finally said. "Good. Then come back tomorrow, same time." I nodded. Though every joint protested, my body felt like it had been woken too suddenly from a long sleep. But I'd come back, because somewhere between those wheezing breaths, I'd felt it, the faint echo of who I used to be. Back home, the silence of the house no longer pressed in quite so heavily. I peeled off my hoodie and stood shirtless in the bathroom, looking at the man in the mirror. My skin sagged, sure. There were liver spots, and the shoulders weren't what they were. But my eyes looked awake. That afternoon, I pulled a crate from the attic marked Denise, Personal. I hadn't opened it in 8 years. Dust coated the lid. Inside were her journals, some loose photos, a faded red scarf, and a small notebook with my name on the cover. My throat tightened. It was filled with letters she'd written but never sent. Notes, lists, things she'd meant to say. I didn't read them, not yet. But just holding the notebook made me feel less alone. Denise had always been the fire. If I was the walls of the house, she was the warmth inside. I'd let that fire go dim. Now I wasn't so sure I had to live in the dark. The next morning came with soreness in places I'd forgotten I had. Brenda was already at the gym, coaching some college kid through deadlifts. When she saw me, she gave a small nod. "Didn't think you'd show," she said. "I'm stubborn," I replied. "Good. Stubborn gets things done." Over the next hour, she introduced me to dumbbells, small ones at first, 5 pounds. 10. I shook like a leaf trying to bench an empty bar, but Brenda didn't mock me. She stood by with her arms crossed, counting calmly. "Breathe at the top," she said. "Control it down." "Easy for you to say." "You think I came out of the womb like this?" she asked, flexing a tattooed bicep. 50 years of living and 30 years of lifting. You think time's a thief, but really it's just a mirror. It shows you what you've stopped fighting for. That stuck with me. I started writing things down after each session, how I felt, what we did. Brenda's odd wisdoms. The word useless stopped rattling so loudly in my head. I wasn't strong, not yet, but I was trying. I was doing. That counted for something. By the end of the first week, Brenda handed me a form. "What's this?" I asked. "Social media waiver. We post member transformations for motivation. Just need your okay." I paused. "You want to take pictures of me?" "Yeah, before and after. People like to see the journey." I almost laughed. Me, the guy who still used a landline, becoming someone's before photo. "You don't have to," she said, "but you're changing. People should see what's possible." I didn't sign that day, but I took the form home. And that night, I found myself sitting at Denise's old desk, reading her letters for the first time. Most of them ended the same way. "Don't forget how alive you are, Mitch, even when I'm gone. Don't you forget." The ink had faded, but the intent burned clear. Denise's voice, scrawled in that familiar looping cursive, reached across time like a warm hand resting on my shoulder. I closed the notebook and stared at the silent room around me. Everything remained in its place. Her reading lamp, the crocheted blanket folded neatly at the end of the couch, the faint scent of old paper, and something softer, like lavender soap. Alive. Not surviving. Not enduring. Alive. The next morning, I signed the form. Brenda raised an eyebrow when I handed it to her. "You sure?" I nodded. "You said people need to see the journey. I think I do too." She didn't smile, but she gave a small nod, the kind you give a fighter just before the bell. We started recording, nothing fancy, just clips on her phone, me trying to balance on a Bocuse ball, me learning to squat with a kettlebell, me grunting through each rep like the gym floor might crack beneath me, Brenda narrated with dry humor. "This is Mitchell. He's 78, and he's just getting started." She posted it. I didn't watch. The thought of seeing myself hunched, breathless, trembling, made my stomach churn. But 2 days later, Brenda approached with a grin that was all teeth. "Mitchell, you went a little viral." I blinked. "What does that mean?" She held out her phone. The clip had racked up over 40,000 views, hundreds of comments, some jokes, sure, but most were surprisingly kind. "My grandpa needs to see this. Legend. Look at him go. No excuses." A user named Serena Moon 25 had commented, "This man has more heart than anyone I've seen on this app. I'm following." I didn't know who she was, but the words hit harder than I expected. For years I'd walked the world as if under a sheet, invisible unless someone needed a favor, a ride, a signature. Now strangers were calling me an inspiration. For doing what? Trying? Breathing hard on a treadmill? Still I kept going. I didn't want fame. I wanted proof that I could grow again, that 78 wasn't the end of the story. Brenda started pushing harder. Resistance bands, farmers' carries, medicine balls that felt like concrete. One morning as I bent to lift a 30-pound weight, she asked, "What made you come in here that first day?" I wiped sweat from my brow. My grandson called me useless. Brenda's face tightened. Kids don't know what they're saying. "He didn't say it to hurt. He said it because he believed it." She crossed her arms. "So you're proving him wrong?" I shook my head. "Not anymore. Now I'm proving me right." That night I logged into the app Brenda helped me set up. My account, iMitchellMoves, had over 1,000 followers. There were messages too. Dozens. One caught my eye. "Mitchell, I just lost my dad. He was your age. I wish he'd fought like you. Thank you for giving me something to hope for." Serena Moon, 25, according to her profile, lived in Santa Fe. Her posts were full of yoga videos and quiet mountain views. I hesitated, then wrote back, "I'm sorry for your loss. I didn't fight at first either. Sometimes it takes someone calling you useless to remember you aren't." She replied with a heart. I closed the phone and leaned back. The house was still quiet, but it no longer felt like an echo chamber. It felt like a pause, like breath before a lift. When Jaden called later that week, casual, offhand, asking if I'd seen the comments, I knew he'd stumbled on the video. "You're kind of trending, Grandpa." "Is that good?" "Yeah, it's cool, actually. People are talking." "What are you saying, Jaden?" He paused. That I was wrong. The words were quiet, but they reached further than any applause. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not just by strangers on a screen, but by the ones I thought had already closed their eyes. Jaden's voice had sounded different that evening, not just quieter, but thinner, like a boy trying to fit into his father's jacket. We didn't speak long, just a few lines exchanged over static, but when we hung up, I stayed at the kitchen table, staring at the dark window until the glass mirrored my reflection. I looked tired. Yes, but something had shifted. My shoulders had started to square themselves again. My neck wasn't sinking into my chest like before. Even my hands, though still weathered, looked steadier. I touched the glass and said nothing. The mirror didn't lie. Not anymore. The next morning, Brenda greeted me with a raised brow and a protein bar. "Today's deadlifts. Don't argue." I didn't. I had begun to crave the routine, the way pain made me feel like a participant in my own body again. She watched me set up the barbell, 45 pounds, then added more, 60, then 80. Each time she stood back with her arms folded, ready to shout or catch me if I faltered. "Your form's better," she said after the third set. "I think my spine's finally remembering what upright feels like." She smiled. A real one, brief and bright. Not bad for a museum piece. I chuckled, low and slow. The insult had lost its sting. Jaden's words had been the match, sure, but this rebuilding was mine. After we finished, Brenda tapped her phone. "You've got mail." "What?" DM that Serena girl. I felt a strange flicker in my stomach. Nervousness, maybe, or something older. Back home, I found the message waiting. You inspired my mom to start walking again. She's 61 and said, "If Mitchell can do it, I can too. You're a ripple." A ripple. That word stayed with me all day. The idea that I had caused movement somewhere far off just by stepping forward, that I had value beyond my living room, beyond my bloodline. It wasn't just redemption anymore, it was impact. The next video Brenda posted showed me trying pull-ups with a resistance band looped under my foot. I barely managed 2. My face was tomato red, but I didn't care. I saw the comments again. More followers, people tagging their parents, their grandparents, goals. This guy makes me want to stop making excuses. He's got more heart than most influencers out there. I laughed when I read that. Influencer.me. The man who once needed help setting the microwave clock. Later that week, Brenda asked me to help demo a movement during a group session, mostly folks in their 50s, 60s, a few younger ones too. "Show 'em how we hinge from the hips," she said, nice and slow. I did it. Hands on the bar, knees soft, back straight. They clapped. A few whistled. One man came up after, silver beard and calloused hands. "Been watching your videos. Figured if you could start, so could I." We shook hands. He looked me in the eye like we were equals. Driving home, I passed the old park where Denise and I used to take walks on Sundays. I pulled over without thinking, sat on the bench where we used to rest under the birch tree. The leaves were still green, Denver not yet willing to admit fall had come. A breeze stirred, soft as breath on the nape of my neck. I whispered into the air, "I'm still here, sweetheart, still trying." When I got home, I found another letter in Denise's notebook, one I hadn't seen before, folded between pages, like it had been waiting. "If you're reading this, it means you've started again. I'm proud of you. I always knew you would." I held the letter to my chest, breath caught somewhere between grief and gratitude. The mirror didn't lie. But Denise's faith in me had seen something even deeper. Not who I was, but who I could still become. That line rang in my head as I packed my gym bag the next morning. I moved slower than usual, not from pain, but something closer to reverence. The soreness I carried was no longer just physical. It was sacred, like proof I'd earned the right to change. I paused to tuck Denise's letter into the side pocket. I wanted it with me, like a compass in a place I was still learning to navigate. At Knox Strength in Motion, Brenda met me with a smirk. "We're upping your deadlift today." "More weight?" "More you," she said, and gestured toward a bar already loaded with a number that made my legs sweat just looking at it. "This one's mental." We worked through warm-ups in silence. The gym buzzed with life. Younger men slamming weights, someone's Bluetooth speaker echoing classic rock through the concrete walls. None of them looked my way, and I didn't need them to. Brenda stood by, eyes locked on me like a coach about to call the final play. I stepped to the bar, knuckles tight, feet planted, spine tall, and lifted. It wasn't perfect. I wobbled, my left foot shifted. I grunted loud enough to startle someone doing bicep curls nearby, but I locked out. I held it. Brenda let out a slow whistle. Now that was a lift. When I set the bar down, my hands were trembling, but not from weakness. It was something else, something bigger. We didn't talk much after. Sometimes triumph doesn't need commentary. Back home, I found Jaden waiting on my porch. He wore a hoodie pulled low, his sneakers scuffed, posture sheepish. I hadn't seen him in weeks, not since the video. He stood as I stepped out of the car. "Hey, Grandpa." "Jaden." He scratched his neck. "You've been, busy." I leaned on the porch rail. "You saw the videos." "Everyone saw the videos." And, "You're kind of a badass." I didn't respond. He sat on the top step. "Look, I was a jerk. I didn't mean to be cruel. I thought I was being funny. You believed it, though." Jaden nodded. "Yeah, I did. Silence stretched between us like an overgrown yard neither of us wanted to mow. "I was wrong," he said finally, "about what you can do, about who you are." That moment, quiet, unforced, clumsy, meant more than I could express. Not because I needed his approval, but because I'd stopped seeking it. "What changed your mind?" I asked. "You did. And those comments and—" He paused, his voice tight. "There's this girl I liked. Serena. She said you were cooler than any guy she knew." I raised an eyebrow. "Serena Moon?" He blinked. "You know her? She messages me encouragement. Said her mom started walking again because of the videos." Jaden looked stunned, and I saw it then. The realization that I had a world beyond him, that I mattered to people he didn't know, that my worth didn't begin or end with his opinion. He swallowed. "I want to train with you, if that's okay." I didn't answer right away. I just opened the door. He followed me in. That night I texted Brenda, "One more for the squad. My grandson wants in." She replied with a fist emoji and a flexed bicep. Later, I walked past the mirror in the hallway, caught a glimpse of myself in profile, not young, not transformed, but upright and enough. That lift had changed something, not in my back, but in my spine, where resolve lives, where shame used to hide. For the first time, I wasn't just rebuilding myself. I was standing in who I'd become. Jaden showed up the next morning in basketball shorts and an overstuffed gym bag. His eyes scanned the dumbbells and rigs with a nervous energy I recognized. It was the same feeling I'd had my first day, back when the only thing heavier than the weights was the doubt dragging me down. Brenda didn't coddle him. She nodded once and pointed toward the mats. "Warm up. No ego, no slacking." Jaden followed without question. I kept a watchful distance, stretching while stealing glances his way. He struggled through the first few moves, mountain climbers, push-ups, planks, but he didn't quit. That mattered more than anything. Brenda came to stand next to me as Jaden tried to hold a side plank, arm shaking. "He's got more in him than he knows," she said. So did I. She didn't argue. When Jaden finally collapsed onto the mat, sweating and breathless, Brenda offered him a sip from her water bottle. "You'll hate me now," she said, "but thank me in 6 weeks." Jaden groaned. "I already hate you." I laughed. That afternoon we stopped for smoothies. Jaden poked at the green foam suspiciously. "This looks like swamp water." "Drink it," I said. "You'll live." He sipped and made a face. "Barely." We sat in the truck with the windows cracked. Denver's early fall sun warmed the dash, and for a while we said nothing, just breathed the same air, just existed. "Grandpa," he said finally, "do you ever think about dying?" I turned, surprised. "You?" "No, you." He looked away. "I mean, you're not young. I guess I used to think you were always sort of waiting." "For what?" "I don't know. The end?" His words didn't sting this time. They stilled me. I said honestly. "For a long time." "What changed?" "You." He looked back at me, startled. "Me?" "You lit the fire. You just didn't know what it would burn down first." Jaden stared out at the street. A boy in a hoodie walked past, holding hands with a girl laughing into her collar. For a moment, Jaden looked older than 20. Something thoughtful passed across his face. "I don't want to be that guy who gives up on people before they're done," he said. "I don't want to be that small." "You're not," I said. "Not if you stay open." At home, I pulled Denise's notebook from the drawer. Jaden saw it and asked, "You still read her stuff?" "Every page," I said. "She's part of this, even now." He didn't ask to read them. He just nodded, respectful in a way I hadn't seen in him before. Later that week, Brenda posted a video of the two of us deadlifting side by side. Her caption read, "2 generations, 1 fight. The mirror doesn't care about age. It only reflects the work." The clip took off. Followers climbed. Comments poured in. "This is real legacy. Best duo on the app. More Jaden and Mitchell, please. Jaden read every comment. I watched him read them, his jaw tightening, eyes darting, heart visible on his sleeve, and something clicked. Not fame, not ego, recognition. That night, as we left the gym, Brenda clapped me on the back. You feel that? What? The shift in the room, she said. You're not the student anymore, Crane. Not entirely. And I realized she was right. I had begun this journey to prove I was still alive, but now I was helping others come alive too, and that's when I knew the power I'd reclaimed was never just mine to hold. That realization carried me through the next few weeks. Jaden was training regularly now, pushing harder, even correcting my form sometimes. Brenda made us a weekly feature on the gym's social media, calling it Crane Fridays. People sent messages from all over the country, a man from Kentucky, a grandmother from Idaho, a teenager recovering from surgery in Oregon, each of them writing the same thing in their own way. You gave me a reason to move again, but not everyone celebrated. One Sunday, my son, Jaden's father, invited us for dinner. We hadn't spoken much since Denise's funeral. Distance, not anger, but distance had a weight all its own. He and his wife, Marjorie, greeted us with smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. The table was set with care, roast chicken, potatoes, salad in a chilled bowl. Jaden sat beside me, texting until Marjorie cleared her throat and asked him to put it away. We ate. The food was good, but the room was tight with tension, like a shirt that no longer fit. My son Harold cleared his throat halfway through the meal. We've been seeing the videos, he said. I paused with my fork in midair. I thought you might. Marjorie jumped in, voice soft but sharp. We're just a little concerned, Mitchell. At your age, this internet attention could be overwhelming. Jaden scoffed. You mean you're embarrassed? Marjorie flushed. Excuse me? Come on, Jaden said. You didn't care when Grandpa was sitting at home alone. Now he's lifting weights and has a bigger following than me, and suddenly you're concerned. Harold's voice hardened. It's not about jealousy. It's about health. Image, dignity. I put my fork down. Dignity? I asked. Is that what you call silence, withering in a chair, letting the world forget you exist? Dad, Harold said, glancing around like the neighbors might hear. You're 78. You shouldn't be trying to be alive, I said. You think I'm trying to be alive? No, son. I am alive. For the first time in years. Marjorie spoke again, this time with edge. But what happens when it goes wrong, when you fall, when people mock you? Do you really want your legacy to be pull-ups on the internet? Jaden stood up then. His voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. You want to talk about legacy? Look around. He's doing more good now than most people half his age. People love him because he shows up for himself and for them. That's what legacy is. The table fell into silence. Harold looked at me. Really looked. For the first time in years, I saw something in his face that wasn't distance. It wasn't approval either. It was confusion, like he'd missed the moment I stopped being old and started being new. You really think this is helping people? He asked. Yes, I said, and not just them. Me? Marjorie reached for her wine glass. It's not what we pictured for your retirement. I smiled, slow and calm. It wasn't what I pictured either, but here we are. After dinner, Jaden and I left without dessert. The night air was crisp, the stars hanging low above Denver's skyline. I didn't mean to blow up, he said. You didn't, I replied. You said what needed saying. He paused, then asked, You okay? I nodded. Better than okay. I finally told my son the truth, and with that, something unspoken between us cracked. Not from pain, but from growth. That night at that table, I wasn't the weak link in the family chain. I was the hammer. The air after that evening felt different, like I'd knocked the dust off a room that had been sealed too long. I slept soundly for the first time in months. No Denise dreams, no aches dragging me up at dawn. Just the quiet satisfaction of finally saying what had needed saying to my son, to myself. But the house felt smaller now, not in square footage, but in spirit. Each room carried the ghost of my old self, the one who drifted in sweatpants, counted pills, and measured time by sunset, the one who stood too long at windows, mistaking stillness for peace. I'd outgrown him. I could feel it in my breath, my bones, the new steadiness in my hands. Even the walls seemed to echo back. You've moved on, so move out. The thought struck me one Tuesday morning as I folded laundry. My hands paused over a flannel shirt I hadn't worn since Denise passed. I pressed it to my face. It no longer smelled like her, just detergent and the faint dust of memory. I folded it gently, placed it in the donation pile, and kept going. That afternoon I visited a small apartment complex Brenda had mentioned months ago, mostly seniors, quiet place, but close to the gym. Nothing fancy, a one-bedroom with light that spilled in through east-facing windows, hardwood floors, a balcony just big enough for 2 chairs and a potted fern. The leasing agent, a kind woman named Marcia, with marbled gray braids and a soft voice, walked me through. I know it's a big step, she said as I traced my fingers along the edge of the kitchen counter. It's the right one, I said. It's time. She handed me an application. I took it without hesitation. At home that night, I sat in Denise's old armchair. It creaked beneath me, not with age, but expectation. I opened her notebook to the last letter she wrote, the one I had read too many times to count. Let the world see you, even the parts you're afraid to show, especially those, I whispered. I'm trying. And this time I didn't cry. The move took 3 weeks. Jaden helped, so did Brenda. Though she grumbled about lifting boxes, we packed memories into labeled bins, kept only what felt necessary, not for nostalgia, but for continuity. The rest went to Goodwill or stayed for Harold to deal with later. The new apartment had no ghosts, just quiet possibility. I arranged my dumbbells along the wall, hung a framed shot of Denise at Red Rocks, smiling, wind-tousled, eyes squinting into the sun. She'd been 29. I placed her notebook beside my bed, spine facing out. The first night there, I sat on the balcony with a mug of tea and listened. Cars in the distance, laughter from an open window, someone's dog barking at the wind. No loneliness, just space, just me. The next morning, Brenda picked me up for our session. She raised an eyebrow when she saw the new place. Well, well, look who grew wings. I smiled. Felt like time to stop living in a memory. You're glowing, Crane. It's sweat and freedom. She laughed, that dry rasp that always made people turn and smile. In the gym, I added 10 more pounds to my deadlift. Didn't flinch, didn't wobble. Brenda didn't even have to count. The silence in the new apartment wasn't loneliness. It was mine. For the first time in years, I woke up not out of obligation or stiffness, but out of curiosity. The light broke through the blinds in soft slats. My feet met the hardwood floor with no complaint, no Denise humming in the kitchen, no pills lined up like obligations on the counter, just breath, morning. Me. I moved slowly, deliberately, every gesture measured like I was learning to dance again. The coffee brewed strong, and I drank it on the balcony, wrapped in my old flannel robe, listening to the city rise below me. Somewhere, a bus hissed its doors open. A woman laughed 3 floors down. Birds warbled at intervals. I wasn't needed. I wasn't missed. And yet, I wasn't forgotten. There was peace in that distinction. At the gym later, Brenda didn't say much, just watched. Something's changed, she said during shoulder presses. I think I'm starting to like myself again, I said, breathless. That'll do it. Jaden arrived halfway through the session, red-faced from his run over. He fist-bumped me, then Brenda, then grimaced. Leg day? Worse, she said. Trust day. He groaned. I liked it better when we were anonymous. You were never anonymous, I told him. You were hiding. He grinned. And now? You're sweating in public with your grandfather. Welcome to the revolution. We finished late, muscles trembling, but spirits high. Back at my place, I offered Jaden a water and watched as he scanned the room. "You look happy here?" he said. "I am." He sat on the arm of the couch, sipping. "I told Serena about this place. She said she wants to meet you someday." "Oh, yeah?" I asked, eyebrow raised. Jaden flushed. "She thinks you're cool. She said you remind her of her dad, before he got sick. Tell her I said thank you, and she's got good taste." He laughed. "You going to start dating again?" "Now that you're Denver's fittest grandpa." I paused. I hadn't thought about romance in years. Grief had covered that part of me like a dust sheet over forgotten furniture, but lately I'd felt something. Openness, maybe even desire. "There's time for that," I said. "Right now I'm just learning how to be in my own company." Jaden looked down, thoughtful. "It's weird. I used to feel sorry for you, but now I think I'm jealous." "Don't be. Just learn from it." He nodded. After he left, I sat down to record a new video. No lifting this time, just a short message. People ask what keeps me going. The truth? It's not strength. It's forgiveness. For the years I wasted. For the bitterness I held. For the version of myself I stopped believing in. Every rep, every step is a way of saying, I'm still here, and I matter. The video didn't go viral. It went quiet. But I started getting different kinds of messages, private ones, longer ones. "You helped me get out of bed today. I haven't looked in a mirror in a year, but I did today. My son called me hero for the first time." That night I went to bed with my windows open and Denise's notebook resting on my nightstand. I didn't read from it. I didn't have to. I closed my eyes to the sound of city breath, buses, voices, faraway music, and I smiled. Not a grin. Not a performance. Just something like joy, a real, deep, and quiet as the night that held it. That kind of joy, the kind that doesn't need an audience, has a way of filling the air even after you've moved on from it. The next morning, my coffee tasted richer. The street below looked less like a city and more like a promise. I walked to the gym instead of catching a ride. My legs ached, but carried me anyway. Brenda caught me doing curls in the mirror. "You showing off for someone?" I grinned. "Just the old man in the reflection. He's been showing up lately." Jaden was late that day, which wasn't like him. We were scheduled to shoot a partner workout, something fun and light, nothing heavy. Brenda shrugged when I asked. Probably slept through his alarm. But an hour later, he called. I stepped out of the gym to answer. "Grandpa? Jaden, everything all right?" His voice was smaller than I remembered. "Can I come over?" "Of course." He arrived a little after noon. No gym clothes, just jeans, a windbreaker, and that weight behind his eyes I'd seen before in Denise, just once, the night her mother died. I didn't ask anything, just poured him some water and sat beside him. He fiddled with the hem of his sleeve. Serena broke up with me. I didn't react, didn't need to. She said I wasn't ready for someone like her, that I was trying to grow, but still scared of real intimacy. I nodded slowly. "Do you think she's wrong?" He looked away. "No." Silence held us there, but it wasn't empty. It was respectful. Measured. Then he added, "She said she admired you more than me." I raised my eyebrows, but said nothing. "She said you were emotionally honest, that you weren't afraid to be vulnerable." He turned toward me, the muscle in his jaw twitching. "I didn't even know what that meant until I watched your last video, the one about forgiveness." Now I understood. This wasn't about Serena, not really. It was about self-recognition. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I haven't forgiven myself for the way I talked to you that day. I thought I had, but I haven't." I reached over, placed a hand on his shoulder. "I did," I said. Jaden's shoulders dropped like someone had finally taken a weight off his back. "I don't deserve that," he said. "No one deserves it," I replied. "That's what makes it a gift." His breath hitched. Then he laughed, bitter and soft. "You're better at this whole life thing than I ever gave you credit for." "I had to lose a lot to get here." He wiped his eyes roughly with the back of his hand. "Thanks, Grandpa." We didn't speak again for a while. But when he left, he hugged me tight, not out of obligation, but need, the kind of hug men give when they're finally allowed to be whole. That evening, a notification pinged on my phone. Serena had commented on one of my older posts. Jaden's trying. I see it. Thank you for showing him how. Brenda texted too. The boy's got heart. He'll get there. I replied, he already has. That night I recorded again, this time for Jaden, though I didn't say his name. Sometimes the people who hurt us don't need to be punished. They need to be shown a door they forgot was open. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's a bridge. Walk it together if you can. If you can't, leave the light on. I used to think the hardest part of aging was being ignored, but the truth, it's watching your children become lost and realizing your strength lies in helping them find their way back. That truth settled into me like a stone dropped into a still pond. Not heavy, just final. Harold had drifted so far in the years since Denise passed, not cruel, not absent, just quietly distant, the kind of man who stayed busy, made lists, paid bills, and never asked how grief moved through a room. The videos had made me a stranger to him, first a novelty, then an embarrassment, but I saw it differently now. I saw fear behind his silence, the fear that I was becoming something he couldn't predict, couldn't contain. The following Saturday, Harold called. Dad, I think we should talk. His voice was formal, but not cold. I agree, I said. He invited me to their place for lunch, not dinner, not some grand family gathering. Just the two of us, quiet and neutral, like a ceasefire. I wore my navy button-down, the one Denise liked best. I brought nothing, not even the notebook. Marjorie wasn't home. The house was still, filled with the muted scent of polish and baked bread. Harold gestured to the dining room, but I sat in the living room instead, on the old leather chair where he used to sit as a boy, knees curled under, asking me why the sky changed colors at night. He joined me there. We didn't speak right away. Finally he sighed. Jaden told me about Serena and about your talk. I'm glad he did. He's different lately, softer, more aware. That took work from him and from pain. Harold looked down at his hands. I envy that kind of change. I'm not built for it. I studied him for a moment, the gray at his temples, the line between his brows, the faint tremor in his left hand he tried to hide. You are, I said. You just never had to prove it. He laughed quietly. Maybe, or maybe I've spent too long trying to be perfect. You weren't raised to feel. You were raised to succeed. That landed somewhere deep. His mouth opened, then closed. Then he nodded. I'm sorry, he said finally, for dismissing you, for assuming your journey was a midlife crisis delayed, for not seeing what it really was. And what do you see now? He swallowed. A man who came back from the edge, who didn't just survive, but lived. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, mirroring his pose. Then it's not too late for us. Harold looked up. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or grief, still raw under the surface. I want to understand, he said. This version of you, I want to be part of it. I nodded. Then show up. Not for the content, not for the crowd. Just for me. I will. We sat there a while longer, not needing to fill the space. As I left, he walked me to the door. Just before I stepped out, he touched my arm. Dad, would you ever consider coming to speak at my firm about aging, transformation? They do these wellness talks. I think people could really use your story. I paused, not out of reluctance, but out of awe. I'd be honored. He smiled. I'll set it up. I walked back to my apartment with a strange sensation in my chest. Not pride, not triumph. Permission. They tried to shrink me into memory, into myth. But now, even Harold had to admit it, I wasn't fading. I was rising. Again and again. Until the air finally met me where I stood. That Sunday, the world felt wide open. I'd just returned from a long walk near Washington Park, the air dry and pine-scented, the sidewalks littered with gold-leafed cottonwood. Fall had softened the edges of everything, except me. I was packing my gym bag when a knock sounded at the door. I opened it, expecting Jaden. It was Marjorie. Her mouth was tight, her purse clutched like a shield. She wore a camel coat and too much perfume. I hadn't seen her alone in nearly a year. May I come in? I stepped aside, cautious. She stood in the center of my living room as if surveying damage. Her eyes scanned the dumbbells, the notebook on my table, the worn copy of The Prophet Denise once underlined in blue pen. "I'll be brief," she said. "I wanted to speak to you before Harold gets carried away." "Carried away with what?" "With this fantasy," she said, "of you as some self-help icon, of you advising firms and speaking on stages like you've conquered something extraordinary." I stayed quiet. She took it as invitation. "You were quiet for years. Harold needed support after Denise died, and you folded. Now suddenly you're a sage?" My voice was steady. "I never claimed to be anything but alive. That seems to bother you." "It's not that," she snapped. But the heat betrayed her. "It's exactly that," I said. "You don't like that I've become something you can't dismiss." She looked toward the balcony, as if needing fresh air. "You're undermining Harold." "No," I said. "I'm finally seeing him, and he's seeing me. That scares you." She moved closer, voice low. "Just be careful. Don't embarrass the family." I laughed, soft and sharp. "You already did that when you erased me." Her lips parted. She hadn't expected that. I stepped past her, opened the door. "We're done making quiet bargains, Marjorie. You don't get to manage me." She didn't move, so I said again, firmer, "Goodbye." She walked out without another word. I stood there a moment, the air behind her still trembling, but inside me, everything had gone still. That night, I didn't record a video. I sat on the balcony with a blanket, Denise's notebook unopened in my lap. The stars above Denver blinked like a Morse code I hadn't yet learned. But I was listening. Jaden called. "She came by," I said. "I know," he replied, voice low. "She doesn't get to define what happens next." I told her that. She didn't like it. "She's used to steering the story." "Not anymore," he said. "Harold's excited for your talk. He already told his partners." That warmed me more than the blanket. "Thanks, Jaden." "You earned it." Later, I walked back inside, looked at myself in the mirror again, the same one I'd once feared. The man there had wrinkles, yes, but also definition. In his arms, his back, his eyes. That man had chosen his life. No permission needed. When I shut the door behind Marjorie, I shut it behind every compromise I'd ever made to be smaller, quieter, less myself. And for the first time, no part of me looked back. The next weeks unfolded like petals, each one lighter than the last. I started waking before the alarm, not from dread, but momentum. My steps carried purpose, errands, gym, bookstore, sometimes a walk to the Little Lake Cafe. Brenda swore had the best lemon scones in Denver. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling workout, Brenda handed me a flyer. "Senior Wellness Mixer," she said, tilting her head. "Don't laugh. They'll have kombucha." I scanned it. A local center downtown, Sunday evening, open to the public. "I don't dance," I said. "You don't need to. You talk. You listen. You wear that blue shirt that makes people think you're about to give a TED Talk." I smirked. "I'll think about it." That Sunday, I showed up. The hall was warm with light and sound, tables with fruit trays, bowls of hummus, folding chairs set in soft semicircles. People wore cardigans and walking shoes and hopeful glances. I recognized a few faces from the gym, not many, but enough to nod, to feel rooted. I poured myself a glass of ginger tea and scanned the room. That's when I saw her. She stood near the window, wearing a slate-gray dress and sneakers, her silver blonde hair pulled into a loose bun. Her posture was relaxed, but her eyes were alert, scanning, much like mine. She caught me watching and smiled. Not flirtatious, not shy, just present. "Mitchell, right?" she said when I approached. "I am. I'm Serena's mom." That stopped me short. She extended a hand. "Carolyn, you're Serena's. She showed me your videos months ago. Said you reminded her of her father. That meant a lot." We shook hands. "Hers was warm, firm. She raised a good daughter," I said. Carolyn chuckled. "I'd like to think I helped." We sat, talked. About nothing grand. Gardening, the cold front, her late husband's strange habit of freezing Twinkies, the way music sounded different when played from a phone versus a record. It was unhurried, unforced, not a date, not a script. After an hour, someone started a jazz playlist through the community speakers. A few brave souls danced. I didn't. But I watched Carolyn tap her fingers in rhythm against her knee. "You like to dance?" I asked. "I used to." "What stopped you?" She looked at me, that same calm smile in her eyes. "Time, grief, the usual culprits." I nodded. "Maybe it's time to reclaim a few things." She didn't reply, but she didn't look away. When the event ended, she slipped her number onto a napkin, casual as breathing. "Not a commitment," she said. "Just a bridge." I folded the napkin and tucked it in my wallet. Jaden called the next day. "So, did you meet anyone?" I hesitated. "Maybe." "Uh-oh. Not like that." "Okay, maybe like that." He laughed. I didn't correct him. Later, I opened Denise's notebook. It fell open to a page I didn't recognize, one written in tighter script. "The heart doesn't expire. It simply waits to be noticed again." I closed the cover and sat back. For years, I thought connection ended at a certain age, that friendship was youthful, romance reserved for those still walking through life with an open suitcase. But now, in this warm room of strangers, I understood. Some of us were just waiting for the right invitation. Carolyn and I didn't rush. We exchanged quiet texts, recipes, book recommendations, a link to a violinist she'd heard on the radio. Once she sent a photo of her backyard garden, winter stripped but still hopeful, and said, "I like things that come back stronger." I invited her to the gym, half joking. She came, wide-eyed and game, laughing through her first planks. Brenda gave her a thumbs up, whispering to me, "She's got grit." We didn't define what we were. We didn't need to. I was learning to let things breathe. Meanwhile, the construction on my new place moved fast, faster than I expected. It was a condo in a quiet co-op not far from the lake, smaller than the old house, but not cramped. Clean lines, soft paint. A wide window in the bedroom that faced east. Jaden helped me pick fixtures. Carolyn helped pick curtains. Brenda insisted on installing the pull-up bar herself. The final piece was a bench Denise had once chosen from an antique store in Golden. I had kept it in storage, unable to let it go. Now I sanded it down, restained it. It would sit under the bedroom window looking out on sky. The move-in day came with little ceremony, just a key handed over and a light switch flicked on. But when I stepped into that space alone, duffel bag on my shoulder, Denise's notebook under my arm, I felt it. I had walked fully into my next life, no shadows trailing, no hands pulling me back. That evening, Jaden came by with takeout, Vietnamese noodle bowls, our small tradition, and we sat on the floor, legs crossed, cartons steaming in our laps. "This place suits you," he said. "It's simple, but you filled it." "I didn't want to inherit a life anymore," I said. "I wanted to build one." He nodded. "And you did." There was quiet between us, but not the old kind. This quiet was permission, comfort, fullness. He reached into his backpack and pulled out something wrapped in a kitchen towel. "For the wall." I unfolded it carefully, a framed screenshot from my first viral video, the one where I deadlifted with trembling arms and a stubborn smile. Beneath the image, Jaden had added a quote, "Started late, still rising." I didn't speak. Just placed it beside the bench, knowing exactly where it would hang. Later, when everyone left, I lit a single candle and stood in the doorway to my bedroom. The light caught the edges of everything, wood, fabric, framed photos. and made them soft, like memory, without the ache. Denise's notebook rested on the window bench, next to a new book Carolyn had given me, poems about aging with reverence. I looked at them both and whispered, "Thank you." Then I turned toward the window and breathed in the night. I didn't forgive the past, but I repurposed it, and this home, this quiet, intentional space, wasn't a hiding place. It was the prize at the end of the reckoning. It was where the light came in. Most mornings now I rise before the sun, not because I must, but because I want to witness the way light first spills into the room. It's different each day, sometimes gold, sometimes silver, sometimes barely there, but always faithful. I sit on the bench beneath the window with a warm mug, no longer in a hurry, no longer restless. I watch the sky shift and feel the breath in my chest like a slow drum beat. That's what life is now. Not an urgent chase, not a performance, a rhythm. The gym is still part of my routine, though less about weight now, more about motion. Brenda meets me twice a week. We stretch, laugh, talk about nothing and everything. Jaden joins sometimes, still stronger than me, but never smug. We are companions now, equals in sweat and effort. Carolyn and I see each other often. We go for walks, share books. She brings over lemon tarts. She insists are store-bought, but always taste handmade. She never pushes, never demands. Just appears like someone who knows how to be present. I keep making videos, though fewer go viral. That's not the point anymore. Sometimes I read poetry aloud. Sometimes I share a single thought, something learned that week. The comments are quieter now, more tender. One woman in Ohio said, "You reminded me how to age with dignity." Another wrote, "My father died last year. Your voice helped fill the silence." I print those out, not to display, just to hold. Jaden recently got a job with a nonprofit, youth mentorship through fitness. He said he learned from me that strength has less to do with weight and more to do with showing up. He calls it grandpa wisdom, then rolls his eyes. Harold and I talk weekly. Still a bit formal, but there's a softness that didn't exist before. He asks questions now, listens. Told me once, "You raised me better than I gave you credit for." It's enough, and Denise, she's still here. Not as a ghost, but as a thread in the fabric of it all. Her notebook stays near my bed. I reread it less, but I keep it close. I know the pages by heart. I know her voice by memory. One evening, alone, I walked to the lake by my condo. The air was cool, the water still. I stood by the edge and thought of beginnings, of what it meant to be irrelevant, discarded, wrinkled, and useless. As Jaden once said in a moment, he regrets more than I ever needed him to. But that wasn't the end. None of it was. I became something after all. Not a brand, not a phenomenon, just whole, in my own skin, in my own time. As the sun dipped and the sky blushed, I whispered aloud, not to anyone in particular, "I made it." Not to fame, not to some summit of achievement, but to a place within myself I'd spent decades avoiding. Peace, I've learned, doesn't arrive loudly. It slips in like dawn. It waits until you're ready to see it. And once it lands, it never asks for proof. So here I am, 78, scarred, smiling, loved in ways that count, alive in ways that matter. Not a lesson, not a caution. Just a man who took the long, honest road home,